Hey guys, Michael Corsentino with a little ON1 Perfect Photo Suite inspiration for you. I want to walk you step by step through the editing process that my student Christine used in order to take her image from ordinary to extraordinary, and that all resulted in a nice fat wall portrait sale for her, as I knew that it would. She was able to really take her image from ordinary to extraordinary. So I want to walk you through each of the steps that she used in order to do that. My edit won't match hers exactly. I'm going to do a couple other things, but it'll be really close, and then I'll get to show you some of the things I like to do as well. So let's take a look at the before and after before we start, just so you can kind of see where we started out and where we are going to end up. Let me just resize this so you guys can see the image in its entirety in the recording area here. All right, close enough. All right, so that's where the image started out. As you can see, there's some things that need to be removed, and the image needs to be straightened, etc. Some of the lighting equipment needs to be removed. And here is where the finished image ends up. You can see here that it's a dramatically different look. It's got a really cool, edgy look to it. The stadium lights have been turned on. We'll tackle that in Photoshop. And just an entirely different looking image. So let's dig right in, and I'm going to show you how Christine went about creating this. Again, she had zero experience with ON1 and zero experience in Photoshop, and was able to create this really killer image. So I'm just going to drag the original down here to, so you won't be able to see this, but in my dock I have the ON1 Perfect Photo Suite 10 icon. I'm just going to drag it onto there. It's going to open up this edit box, and I will say edit a copy, and we'll keep it at 16-bit, and we'll say OK. This will open the image. Perfect. All right, that takes us into perfect layers. So now I want to just take care of some of the house cleaning that needs to be done before we move into the effects part of the image. So the first thing that we'll do is use the perfect eraser, and let's clean up this light stand. I'm just using my bracket keys on my keyboard to resize the brush, and I'm just going to paint over this. And there we go. I'll just clean this up a little bit. Good. And now I want to get rid of these people over here. So for that, I'm going to use the clone tool, and I'm going to zoom in. I'm just going to use the plus key on my keyboard along with the command key and plus key to zoom in. Use the space bar and the mouse to zoom in. And then I'm going to use my option key. I'm working on a Mac. I'm going to use my option key and just resize my brush a little bit. I'll use my option key to sample, and you'll see here that we get a preview of exactly what we're looking at. So we'll just go in here and carefully clone. We'll do the same up here and here. We'll move down here. We'll try to avoid any kind of repetitions, repeating patterns. Come back in here. There we go. Just fix this up a little bit. And there we go. Close enough. All right, let's zoom out. Again, I'm using my command key and now my minus key, or I can just do command 0, and that'll take me back there. Okay, perfect. Next, I want to straighten the image. We got rid of all the stuff that we needed to get rid of, so the next thing I want to do is straighten the image. So I'll go over to my crop tool, and I will hit the level symbol up here, and I'll just drag a line across where I know that there's a level area, an area that should be level, and that will straighten the image for me. And I'll just hit my enter key, and that will lock in the change. And there we go. So that is looking pretty good. All right, so the next thing that I want to do is add a little bit of contrast. So I'll move over to Enhance. And I'm going to boost the contrast by about 30. In there, that'll add a little contrast. Good, and next we'll move it over to Perfect Effects. And we'll start to dig in on creating this super cool image. All right, so let's jump back out here. We're in Filters, you can see over here on the left. And I'm going to start with Grunge filter, which is what I recommended I like Bleach Bypass and Grunge are great for this kind of look. Either of those are really great candidates for the kind of look that we're going to create. So we'll go into Grunge. And I didn't want to do that. Let's take that off. We'll go back to the normal one. And again, you've got all these different options that you have at your disposal, which is really cool. So, you know, there's just a million different ways to kind of season to taste. So we'll just start with normal, and we will take the opacity down to master opacity to about 60%. Good. And then every time we're going to add a new effect, we want to add a new filter, we're going to hit this Add Filter button, because if you don't, you'll overwrite what you did previously. So you really want to be careful to always do that. With the first one that you do, you'll have a blank layer available to you. Every one that you do subsequently, you'll want to hit this button right here. And now you can see how I've got an empty layer, and I'm ready for my next effect. And that is going to be Tone Enhancer. I want to lighten things up a little bit, and I want to enhance the tone. So we're going to jump back out here to our filters, go to Tone Enhancer, and I'll choose Lighter. And it's going to run that. Good, and we'll take that down to about 70%. There we go, good. We'll add our next filter, and we'll go back out to our overview of filters, and we'll choose Dynamic Contrast. And I'm going to choose Natural for that one, and make that, let's say, around 80%. Good. And another filter. Go back out here. So there's a lot of layering and seasoning, and you know, it's nice. You can build a really custom look by mixing and matching and just kind of, you know, changing the opacities as you go. So our next one is going to be Color Enhancer. We'll go over to Color Enhancer. And for Color Enhancer, I will choose Auto Color and take that down to 88, somewhere right around there. Good. Add Filter. We're going to go back out here, and we're going to go to Black and White. And the reason that I'm going to Black and White is I want to give this image a desaturated look. Now, there are lots of ways to do it, but this is a really easy and straightforward way to do it. You just overlay Black and White, and you can see the image is not completely black and white because the master opacity is 59%. So now I'm just going to darken, lighten this opacity to about 76%. There we go. And that's what Christine did. So I want to do a couple other things. I want to add another filter. I want to sharpen things up a little bit. So let's go out here to our sharpening. And I want to choose Amazing Detail Finder. And that'll add some sharpening to it. And you can leave that as it is. Good. And let's add a filter. Jump back out. Go to Gradient Brush. Alright, now what I want to do is I want to darken this sky up substantially. Alright, so what we're going to do here is I'm just going to choose Darken. And because it's an adjustment brush, you won't see an effect, but it's going to allow me to paint in the effect. So I'll hit that. You can see here that the mode that I have is Paint In, and that's going to allow me now to paint in the darkness in the areas that I want it. So I'm just going to increase my brush size by hitting the bracket key on my computer, on my keyboard, And we'll just go and paint in here, and my opacity is 100%, so I'm getting the maximum output. I can adjust my brush low just so I can kind of finesse these areas down here. There we go. All right, now I like that, but I want it to be even darker. So let's do it again. We'll add a filter, and we'll darken. And now I'm going to take my opacity to 50%, which is going to allow me to build as I go and kind of season to taste. It's not going to give me a 100% right in one shot. Good, we'll finesse those areas with a smaller brush in a minute. I like the 100% version, so let me just make my brush smaller, and we'll go in here and kind of add that density where we need it. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Perfect. All right, next thing I want to do is I want to add a little bit of brightness in certain areas, like his face. So I'm going to add another filter. I'm going to stay in the adjustment brushes because it allows me to work locally. And I want to choose lighten. I'm just going to run that filter. I'll adjust my brush size. I'm at 50% opacity, which is fine for this. And I'm just going to brighten up just a little bit on both sides. And that gives me the brightness that I need. Okay, one thing I forgot to do is to darken these areas down here on the bottom. So let's add another filter. We'll go over here to darken. And go to keep it at 50% opacity. And let's darken down some of this stuff. Adjust my brush size. There we go. We can add to darken this a little bit more. I'm just sort of noodling my brush size as we go. Darken these sneakers a little bit. Darken that arm. Bring this down a little bit. Keep our focus on our subject. Darken this a little bit. There we go. Now things are starting to get a little dramatic. Good. All right. And one last thing for good measure. I want to just give it a little bit more contrast. So let's jump out here. And I'm going to head back over to dynamic contrast. And I'll hit natural. And I like that. I like that at 100%. We can sort of dial it back down and see what kind of change it makes. That's a little flat for my liking. I like it right about there. And again, we're getting less of the effect than we would overall because our master opacity is at just about 60%. Okay, excellent. So I'm going to apply this, and then we'll take this into Photoshop, where I want to show you how to turn on these stadium lights. Now, we could do that here, but I like doing it a little bit better in Photoshop. I get a little bit more control for this particular kind of effect because there are some filters built in to Photoshop that allow me to do that. So let's click apply. Perfect. All right, now let's take a look at where we started out and where we ended up. So this is our final, aside from the lights, which we're going to take care of in a minute, and that's where we started off. So pretty dramatic difference in short order. Do that really quickly, and you know, I'm taking the time to walk you guys through it and explain everything, but you can see just how quickly and easily it is to create that. All right, so I'm going to save this, and then we will move into Photoshop, where I'll show you guys how to turn on the lights. All right, here we are in Photoshop, and you can see here in the Layers panel that we have a layered file, which is exported from ON1. And you can see we've got the ON1 effects, we've got the enhance effects, and we've got the original right here. And that's after it was cropped and straightened, and the retouch was done. So we've got all of our effects layered here, which is great. So the next thing that I want to do is show you how to turn on these stadium lights. pretty easy to do. So what we'll do is we're going to create a new layer. So I'll go over to here and select new layer from my drop down menu. Unfortunately you guys won't be able to see this, but you just select new layer from the drop down menu. And then over here in the mode, I am going to choose overlay. And by doing that, it'll turn on this option that allows me to fill with overlay neutral gray, 50% gray. So I'll check that, and I'll just call this lights, and I'll click OK. Now why I'm doing that is because I'm about to run a filter that will only run on a layer that has something on it, and I don't want to run it on my original art. I mean, I guess I could duplicate this layer, but it still wouldn't give me the independent control that I want for each of the lights that I'm going to create. So that's why I'm doing that. Okay, so let's go over here to the filter menu. I'm going to go down here and select render, and then I am going to click on lens flare. And here are the settings. We can see these are dialed in from the last time that I did this. Brightness at 75%. I've chosen the 105mm prime lens, and I am going to click OK. And that is going to give me a little burst of light, and you can see here that it's pretty much exactly where it needs to be, and I can kind of move that around as needed, again because it's on a separate layer, right? And I can turn that on and off as needed. So now what I'm going to do is duplicate that layer, and I can do that just by dragging it down to the layer icon down here on the dock, in the layers palette I should say, right there. Why is it not working? Alright, let's just Command J it. So I just did Command J to duplicate that. And now we've got lights on both portions for both lights. So that's looking pretty good. What I can do also is I can take this and group this into a folder. Oh, I see what I was doing. And I can I can change the opacity as I want for both of these at one time, which is a useful thing to do. What had happened was I was dragging down here to this icon in paths when it should have been dragging down here to this icon in the layers palette, which is right here. So my bad. Okay, good. So we've got some lights. I still am not loving exactly what's going on here. I think it could still be a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is create another layer, a blank layer. I'll show you a different technique, and for this what I'm going to do is drag a big circle right here, and I'm going to then go to the select menu and go to modify, feather the selection, and I'll choose a 60 pixel feather. I'll feather that. I've got white loaded in to my color picker, and I am just going to now option delete to fill this with white. Okay, I'm going to deselect, and I'm going to reduce the opacity to about 60%, somewhere around there. And then I'm going to just move this into position here, and clearly that is still way too much. So I'm going to take it down to around 24%, and I am going to duplicate that, and now I'll show you what I meant. You can just duplicate that by dragging down to the page icon, layer icon, in the layers palette, and now you've got some light happening. Okay, so now I can take this and select both of these, put them into a layer group, and then I can turn them on and off as needed or adjust the opacity as needed. So I can also do the same thing here by duplicating this again just to brighten things up. So I've just duplicated that group by doing that dragging again, and now we're starting to kind of get into the zone where we've got some real light happening. And I think that looks pretty cool. So let's just zoom out, go to there, and we can group all of this stuff together that we did on one, and then we'll just turn it on and off. There's where we started off, and here's where we ended up. So super cool, super easy. Always love seeing the kind of aha moments that happen when people see what's possible with great post-processing and great lighting. So, get out there, try these effects, experiment with your lighting, and have fun with your post-processing using ON1 Perfect Photo Suite 10. Thanks so much, guys. See you next time.